New merchandise available on jg9shop.com. From redesigned 39.6 merchandise to backpacks to ugly sweaters to bucket hats, we've got it all. Plus, now available, we officially have Drink the Spike mugs and glasses, for those who like their drinks more than they like quarterbacks that spike the ball into the ground on every single play. Go to jg9shop.com for the latest JG9 merch for this holiday season. And now, on with our feature presentation. Today, there are many ways to watch any game that you want to from the comfort of your own home, even if the game you want to see isn't the one that's being broadcast over the air. You have NFL Sunday Ticket, you have streaming services. In other words, you have options. No matter where you are located, no longer are you at the mercy of the NFL and the TV station in question for what game you're going to get and be forced to watch. And that's a good thing, because a lot of times, this system left you with games that you weren't interested in, games that were complete and utter blowouts, or both. Now imagine this scenario. The big NBC station in New York has to choose one of two games to air in a market, with one of these games being significantly more appealing to the average fan than the other one. NBC decides that they're going to air the one that no one wants to see, even though the network itself is protesting the decision and telling the league straight up that they do not want to air this game. And sure enough, NBC was completely wrong, as the game that they forced on the market was, unsurprisingly, the significantly worse game. In 1975, this bizarre controversy occurred in Southern California, and this is the story behind one of the dumbest television moments in NFL history. Before I talk about the decision, we need some context to understand how it's determined as to what games are shown where, as well as the two matchups that the network was deciding between to air in the market in question. Nowadays, the network has some leeway in determining what game to televise. It's still the NFL's final call at the end of the day, but at least the network has some input, and at least it's a contributing factor in why sometimes you'll see a network list on Wednesday that they're going to televise one game, but then change their mind and say they're televising a completely different game on Saturday. In 1975, however, the network had no say whatsoever. The network executives at the top made the decision, regardless of the interests of the television network in question, and their word was final. If NBC New York said that an NBC affiliate in Portland had to show a game, then that NBC affiliate in Portland was going to show that game. No questions asked. In other words, you get what you get, and you don't get upset. Obviously, in markets that had an NFL team, you got your team's game. Philadelphia is always getting the Eagles game. Dallas is always getting the Cowboys game, and so on and so forth. That market, which is typically a 75-mile radius, would get all away games and all home games that were not blacked out, meaning that the home game had to be sold out. But once you got outside of that 75-mile radius and were a free market, the choice was up to the executives. Sometimes you would get the team closest to you. Other times, you would get the best or most appealing game of the week. And on October 26, 1975, there was one game that most of the country wanted to see. On that day, the Miami Dolphins were traveling to Buffalo to take on the Bills in an AFC East rivalry game. On paper, this was looking like the biggest matchup of the season up until that point. Both Miami and Buffalo made it to the postseason the year before, with Miami winning the division at 11-3 and Buffalo getting the lone wild card at 9-5. Both Miami and Buffalo were some of the best teams in football, as they both sat at 4-1. Both Miami and Buffalo were exciting teams to watch. Miami had arguably the best quarterback in football in Bob Greasy, who I talked about in a previous video of mine, so if you want to learn more about his storied career, then click the card in the upper right corner. And Buffalo had O.J. Simpson, the best running back in all of football, and a man who through the first 5 games had 823 rushing yards and crossed the 100-yard mark all 5 times. It might have been the best start to a season by any running back ever. And both Miami and Buffalo were playing for the division lead, with the loser likely being out of the postseason if the season ended after 6 weeks, since there were 3 non-division leaders with 4 wins fighting for 1 spot. This was, hands down, the marquee game. This was the 4 o'clock game that the bulk of the country wanted to see. Unfortunately for some markets, it was not the only 4 o'clock game. With very few exceptions, as it is an extreme scenario that to my knowledge has only happened once, which was back in 2019 when the Green Bay Packers and Dallas Cowboys played at 4:25, and the game was carried by every Fox station in the country, you're not going to have nationally televised games on Sunday that aren't in prime time. While there are games where the bulk of the country will get them, as they are the game of the week, you'll never see one game outside of the primetime slots being shown nationally 100% across the board. There were other 4 o'clock games that week in 1975 outside of the highly anticipated Dolphins-Bills matchup that had to be distributed to the television networks. One of these games was between the Oakland Raiders and the San Diego Chargers, and there was just one small problem. The San Diego Chargers were god-awful. At this point, they might have been the worst team in football. You could not pick a worse, more boring team to watch than the Chargers. Through the first 5 games, they were 0-5. They had a point differential that was an abysmal -64, which was the second worst in the AFC, only ahead of the Cleveland Browns. They had scored 37 points all season, which was the worst total in the AFC, at just 2 points ahead of the cellar occupied by the Chicago Bears with 35. For those curious, 37 points comes out to an average of 7.4 points per game. I cannot stress enough just how bad the Chargers were. They had been shut out twice. They had scored more than 10 points just once. They had a game against the Steelers where they lost 37-0, and where their head coach, Tommy Prothro, flat out told the Chargers before the game that they had no chance at winning the game. Because that's some incredible motivation right there as a head coach, telling your team that they're not very good. You can learn more about that debacle by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And in their last game against the Raiders, which took place in Week 3, the Chargers lost 6-0, picked up 5 first downs, and finished the game with negative 22 passing yards. Negative 22. The Chargers had 3 completions all game, and Dan Fouts got sacked 5 times. They were abysmal. No one wanted to watch a Chargers-Raiders rematch over the Bills-Dolphins game. Yet, NBC thought otherwise, and one NBC station was up in arms. Had the Los Angeles Rams sold out their game against the New Orleans Saints, this would not be an issue at all. KNBC, the NBC station in Los Angeles, did not show doubleheaders when the Rams played at home. In that instance, NBC would show an early game, which likely would have been the Atlanta Falcons against the undefeated Cincinnati Bengals, and CBS would show the Rams at home in the late game. However, the Rams did not sell out their game, meaning that the game was blacked out. It opened the door for NBC in Los Angeles to have the late game and show that coveted Bills-Dolphins game. But nope, that's not what the NBC executives in New York had in mind. Because NBC decided that Los Angeles should be subject to watch the winless Chargers take on the Raiders in a rematch of a game that featured 6 total points a few weeks ago. Los Angeles is outside of that 75-mile radius of San Diego, and the secondary market rule, if it even existed back then, didn't apply to markets like Los Angeles that already had an NFL team in the first place. KNBC was furious about this decision, as their hands were tied. Whatever New York said went, and there was nothing that KNBC could do about this whatsoever. If New York said that Los Angeles had to watch the Chargers play the Raiders instead of watching the Dolphins play the Bills, then Los Angeles was watching that game. No questions asked. And KNBC made their frustrations known, launching an attack in the press on the NFL for the decision. An executive at the station said, "New York NBC has decided that people in the Los Angeles area should watch San Diego and Oakland. Apparently, someone in New York feels the whole state can hardly wait to see the winless Chargers and Oakland." The executive continued, saying that their hands were tied, and that they couldn't enter into this decision. But I'm sure if our viewers were given a choice, they would prefer to see O.J. Simpson and defending division champion Miami. And the executive added that they were at the mercy of the New York office. The average fan thought that NBC was the one making this call, so the network was being bombarded with complaints, even though the NBC affiliate in Los Angeles had nothing to do with it, and even though NBC was trying desperately to complain to the NFL and the main NBC station in New York about the move. Alas, KNBC was completely stuck. As for how this move worked out, let's just say that most football fans in Los Angeles were furious at what they saw and what they couldn't see. KNBC tried to get the executives to change their mind. They tried to convince the higher-ups that most of their viewership base would rather watch the game of the season over a winless team that didn't even have their starting quarterback, since Dan Fouts was out with an ankle injury and a boring matchup on paper. They tried to do everything in their power to protest the move, and tried to speak out against this absolutely awful decision on paper. Nothing changed. KNBC was stuck with the Chargers-Raiders game. And when 4 o'clock hit, or 1 o'clock in Los Angeles and out on the West Coast, and most of the country was watching the critical and exciting AFC East matchup, Los Angeles was stuck with what seemed like an absolute dud of a game. So let's see if they made the right call. Let's see if the executives down at the major NBC station in New York knew what was best for Los Angeles. The best game to start with is the game that they decided not to air, which was that highly anticipated Bills-Dolphins game. And sure enough, the game lived up to the hype and then some. Buffalo seemed like they were in complete control for most of the game. They led 13-0 at the end of the first half, and still had a 2-possession lead at the halftime break, as they led at 23-14. However, with the Bills still holding on to their 9-point lead in the fourth quarter, it was time for Miami to show why they were the class of the AFC. With just over 3 minutes left in the contest, Greasy found Jim Mandich on a 5-yard touchdown pass to make it a 30-28 game. It was the first and only catch for Mandich all day, but man, what a time to do that, especially since the pass wasn't the best thrown ball in the world. Then Miami gets a critical stop on defense, as an interception courtesy of eventual Hall of Famer Jake Scott, his second of the day, gave the Dolphins great field position and an opportunity to take their first lead of the day. And capitalize on the moment they did, as with 1 minute left in the game, Don Nottingham punched it in from a yard out to give the Dolphins a 35-30 victory. It was a stunner, and might have been the best game of the entire 1975 season. I'm sure the people in Los Angeles were upset about that, but at least they got to see the Chargers take on the Raiders. And that was an incredible contest that might have been even better than the Bills-Dolphins game, and no one should have complained whatsoever. Oh, who am I kidding? That game sucked. Let's just cut to the chase. The Raiders beat the Chargers 25-0. The game was so gloriously ugly that the Raiders scored on not one, but 2 safeties. The Chargers had 17 net passing yards the entire game, as their quarterbacks in Bobby Douglas and Jesse Freitas combined to go 8 for 28 with 58 yards passing and 4 sacks. San Diego completed a mere 28.5% of their passes, and it's not shocking at all why they fell to 0-6 after the game. In something that seems almost impossible today, this means that across the 2 games that they played against the Raiders, they had -5 net passing yards. I was not alive in 1975, and I had more net passing yards in the series against the Raiders that year than Chargers quarterbacks did. When Douglas came off of the bench, he went 6 for 22 and had a passer rating of 20.6, which is worse than if he did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. As a side note, if you want to learn more about Douglas, in particular, a time where he was actually good, then click the card in the upper right corner. Nothing about this game was pleasant whatsoever. The Raiders more than doubled the yardage of the Chargers, outgaining them 354 to 157. There were 14 penalties, so it was a really sloppy contest. The Raiders had nearly double the first downs that the Chargers did. The game was over by the third quarter, as Oakland led at 23-0 after 3. There were 12 punts. The teams went 0 for 3 combined on their field goal attempts. Head coach Tommy Prothro summed up the ugly game best, saying the Raiders got off the line better, their runners ran better, and their special teams played better. We didn't do much of anything. Safe to say, it was a disaster. There are some ideas that are just blatantly bad on paper, and you know they're not going to work out or be received well. This was one of them. NBC airing the Chargers-Raiders game in Los Angeles instead of the Dolphins-Bills game was a highly controversial decision, and making everyone mad initially by showing this game did not pan out in the slightest bit, especially when the network didn't want to air this game at all. A word to any television executives watching this: if you're deciding what game to air, and your choices are a better game and a worse game, pick the better game. If you don't and it backfires, you're going to wind up looking stupid and alienating your customer base in the process. And NBC learned this the hard way nearly half a century ago. Get your official Jaguar Gamer 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes, link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaguarGator9, and subscribe to 60-Second NFL History on YouTube. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.